Like many young adults with lofty goals, Tara Breckenridge made her way to the big city to pursue her dreams. She hoped to become a professional photographer. In the meantime, to make ends meet, she took a job waiting tables at an upscale adult establishment. It wasn't ideal, but it paid the bills. 23-year-old Tara left work early on the evening of August 3rd, 1992, and that was the last time anyone saw her alive. It's been nearly 33 years since Tara's car was found abandoned on the side of the road in Houston, and her family and friends still don't have many answers. Hello, and welcome to Box in the Basement podcast. I'm your host, Arlene.
And I'm Leah.
In 1996, my world was shattered when my uncle Leon Lorelas was shot execution style in a small town in Texas. To this day, his murder remains unsolved, and the pain of that injustice continues to haunt me, my family, and Leon's friends and coworkers. Here at Box in the Basement, we want to shed light on the overwhelming number of unsolved murders and disappearances here in Texas and beyond. We want to bring awareness to the lesser-known cases that got little to no attention in hopes that someone listening will come forward with any information, because we strongly believe all lives matter. Ultimately, we want to get justice for Leon and for all the victims whose cases are sitting, collecting dust in a box in a basement. Please note that this episode contains depictions of violence that some people may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised.
1992 saw the end of the Cold War and the end of apartheid in South Africa. Bill Clinton was elected president of the United States. NAFTA was signed. The Velvet Divorce led to the creation of the Czech Republic and Slovakia, and U.S. military forces left the Philippines after nearly a century. Andre Agassi and Monica Seles were household names. Christy Yamaguchi won Olympic gold in women's figure skating. Barry Bonds signed his huge contract with the San Francisco Giants, and the Philippine Little League team was stripped of its world championship. Baby Got Back, a staple in any respectable Gen Xer's 90s playlist, was at the top of the Billboard Hot 100 the week of August 3rd, 1992, and Brooks and Dunn topped the country charts with Boot Scootin' Boogie. Death Becomes Her was number one at the box office, classic Robert Zemeckis film there, and Roseanne, Home Improvement, and Murphy Brown ruled primetime TV. I can remember many a late night watching Murphy Brown in my room when I couldn't sleep as a teenager. We've covered Houston in previous episodes, but we'll highlight the basics here just so you have some context. Today, Houston is the largest city in Texas with a population of 2.3 million in the city proper and just over 7 million in the metro area. In 1992, when this crime occurred, Houston proper would have had around 1.7 million people. Houston was founded by brothers Augustus and John Allen in 1836, who named it after the first president of the Republic of Texas, Sam Houston. Its location on the Galveston Bay made it an attractive place to settle for many people looking for a fresh start, and its favorable proximity to both overland and water routes made it a hub for trade and travel. The discovery of oil in 1901 led to a population boom, resulting in massive construction and infrastructure efforts. And to this day, Houston is considered the energy capital of the world. It's also home to the largest medical complex in the world, the Texas Medical Center, and the Johnson Space Center, which is the home of NASA's Mission Control. Houston, we have a problem.
Tara Suzette Breckenridge was born on September 30th, 1968, in Kern County, California. But she grew up in Del Rio, Texas, the third of 5 children in a devout Christian family. She graduated from high school in Del Rio in 1987 and moved to Houston, hoping to pursue a career in photography. She liked keeping her nails long and neat and loved to wear red nail polish. As any of us who have ever moved away to pursue a dream understand, sometimes it takes a good while for the finances to match up with our goals. Tara needed to pay the bills, so she took a job waiting tables at an upscale gentlemen's club in Houston called the Men's Club. She started working there in 1989, usually working the late night shift, and she often didn't get off work until 2 a.m. or later. Tara's friends and family were surprised that she'd choose such an establishment, considering her conservative religious upbringing, but it didn't really seem to cause much friction on the front. They seemed to understand that it was a means to an end. She had a dream, but she needed money in the meantime to pay for rent and her tuition. And working late nights at the strip club was a good way to facilitate her goals. One person who seemingly did have a problem with Tara's job was her boyfriend, Wayne Hecker, who she dated in 1989. That being said, Tara and Wayne moved in together sometime after that, though various articles and interviews indicate that their relationship became more and more unstable as the time went on. Tara's mother, Becky, has said in interviews that she and Tara discussed the possibility of her breaking up with Wayne, but Wayne was unaware of these conversations. On the evening of August 3rd, 1992, business was slow at the men's club, and Tara's supervisor asked her and her colleagues if anyone wanted to leave early. Tara volunteered to clock out early, which was unusual. She was usually the one who volunteered to stay late or work extra hours in order to maximize her tips and wages.
Before we go any farther, I want to interject my opinion here. And as someone who worked retail for a lot of years, I think you'll probably agree with me here on this, Arlene. I think people are making too much of this aspect of the story. I would pick up extra shifts and work late too when I was a broke college student, even when I wasn't a broke college student. But every so often, I'd volunteer to leave early too. Things come up, people get tired and burned out. Maybe she just had a headache or was reading a really good book she wanted to get back to. Who knows? I realize it's a hell of a coincidence that she was killed the night she chose to leave early, so I'm not offended if you disagree.
Right. I'm a Gen Xer. I had it beat into me that you work extra, pull all the weight you can. Don't disappoint people. Don't create more work for others, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, sometimes you just feel like crap and need to cut it short. Or you just need a mental break. I'm not sure she left early for some super secret reason that's linked directly to her disappearance, though.
So anyway, Tara volunteered to leave the club early that night. She changed into casual clothes, and records show that she clocked out at 12:29 a.m. on August 4th. The security guard carried her bag and escorted her to her car, and she left the parking lot without incident. I've seen it mentioned in several places that Tara walked past the club's bouncer without acknowledging that he told her goodbye. But again, I'm not sure what to make of that. From what I've read, she was a friendly person, and for this to have been brought up and endured in the narrative for 3 decades, it must have really been out of the ordinary. But like the fact that she left early, I wonder if we're making too much of this. She could have ignored the bouncer for any number of reasons, intentional or not.
And it's important to acknowledge that she may well have been distracted by her seemingly deteriorating relationship with Wayne Hecker. If she was upset or anxious about that, it could be why she left early and she may have not been too preoccupied to hear the answer.
For sure.
So, at about 5 a.m., Wayne Hecker returned to the home he shared with Tara and found the house empty. According to his statements to the police, he went out looking for Tara, and at around 7 a.m. he found her car, a red 1986 Pontiac Fiero, abandoned on the West Loop North Freeway, about 3 miles from the club where she worked. The car was locked, the alarm wasn't set, the hazards weren't turned on, and Tara's can of mace was inside the vehicle. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no doors left open, no personal belongings strewn about, nothing like that. Later, it was determined that the alternator belt was broken. I don't know much about cars, but I do know that cutting or damaging an alternator belt isn't going to disable a car within 3 miles.
Right. The car is still drivable for a time. Tampering with the alternator belt would just mean the battery doesn't charge. It would take a little while for the car to become non-functional.
So, is this a coincidence? Did the belt wear out or break on its own? Or did someone tamper with her car and stalk her or wait for her to break down? We'll discuss those angles later on.
Tara's boyfriend, Wayne, has been the primary person of interest since the early days of this investigation. First, we know that his relationship with Tara was rocky. In interviews, he claimed that it was all puppies and rainbows, but as we mentioned earlier, Tara's own mother reported that she was always on the verge of moving out or moving on. Wayne claimed that in the early morning hours of August 4th, he was working as a barback at a bar about 15 minutes from where Tara was working. He claimed that he was there all night. He claimed that he called Tara at her workplace sometime that evening, and that someone told him that she was busy and couldn't come to the phone. Nobody who worked at the men's club was able to verify this later, however. In any case, Wayne has asserted that he did not see or speak to Tara after she left for work that evening.
The problem with Wayne's story is that witnesses saw him leave the bar at around midnight on August 4th, and he didn't return until about 1:45 a.m. He also reportedly asked the bartender to say he was there the whole time. The bartender didn't think much of it at the time. Wayne was hoping to be employed at the bar full-time as a bartender himself, so the bartender on duty assumed that was his reasoning. But now, in hindsight, it seems much more sinister. A second suspect was a regular customer at the men's club. I think his name was Gary, if I'm reading the chicken scratch on his notes correctly. This was a man who frequented the men's club and kind of had a thing for Tara. He would regularly leave her love letters and large tips, sometimes as much as $100. In 2025 money, that would be almost $225. I've seen one such love note quoted in a few articles, and it's admittedly creepy. It says, "Do not be scared. Do what you hear tells you. I'm very excited that you'll marry me." And another note said, "The more you hold out, the longer you jeopardize what I feel for you." Tara was obviously aware of this man's feelings for her, and she'd consistently rejected him. He was questioned by police, but he was ruled out pretty early on as a suspect. There was a third person of interest that was made public. His name is Robert Beatty, but that doesn't seem to have amounted to anything either. This was a guy who contacted her family after she disappeared, claiming to be an investigator. He was arrested later on for impersonating a police officer, but he was never charged with anything connected to Tara's disappearance. It's important to note that her family never believed he was involved. He was kind of just seen as a weird dude who wanted attention.
Unfortunately, that's about where we stand as of today in early 2025. Let's do a quick recap before we get into law enforcement's theories. Tara Breckenridge, age 23 at the time, went to work at an upscale topless club on the evening of August 3, 1992 in Houston. Her boyfriend, Wayne Hecker, went to work a shift at another bar about 15 minutes away. Tara's club wasn't busy that night, so she took her boss's offer to leave early, and she departed the club at just before 12:30 a.m. on August 4th, and a security guard walked her to her car. Wayne Hecker, according to witnesses, left his own job at around midnight and was gone until approximately 1:45 a.m., though he'd asked the bartender he was barbacking for to say he was there the whole night. Wayne returned to the home he shared with Tara at around 5 a.m. on August 4th, but Tara wasn't there. He was concerned, so he went out looking for her, and he found her car abandoned on the side of the freeway at around 7 a.m. There was no sign of a struggle, her mace was in the car, and it was later determined that her alternator belt had been cut or broken. Tara was never seen or heard from again.
Wayne Hecker was always considered the primary person of interest in Tara's disappearance, even though he was never charged with any crime. His relationship with Tara was rocky, and her own mother reported that she was always on the verge of breaking it off with him. It's very possible that he knew this was a possibility, and he is responsible for her disappearance. But there's simply not enough information or evidence to tie him to any crime. Let's keep in mind that this was 1992. Cell phones were not commonplace, and there was no Find My Phone service or anything like that. You couldn't go to Amazon and buy a GPS tracker that you could stick on someone's car. Wayne was at work 15 minutes away, and Tara left her shift early, which by all accounts was highly unusual. Wayne claims he never spoke to Tara that night after she left work, and the fact that nobody at Tara's workplace can remember him calling seems to substantiate that, at least on some level. So how would Wayne know she'd left just after midnight, when she normally would have been on shift until 2 a.m.? Wayne's coworkers did report that he left his shift for about an hour and 45 minutes that night, from around midnight to 1:45 a.m. This does coincide with Tara's departure from the men's club, but again, how would he know she was leaving?
Right. Did she call him at his job? We don't have access to any phone records from either club. Nobody remembers Wayne calling the men's club, but that doesn't mean much. Without phone records, we can only speculate.
I don't know. Wayne said he didn't talk to Tara that night, but there's no way to really confirm that. I've seen some other claims that people did see Tara on the phone that night while she was at work, but I haven't been able to confirm this. But man, that's a huge coincidence that she left the parking lot at around 12:30 while Wayne was MIA from his job. And the spot where Tara's car was found was about halfway between her workplace and the bar where Wayne was barbacking that night. But again, that broken alternator belt is not something that would have disabled her car right away. There's no way Wayne could have known her car would break down on the highway that night. And it's not like she called him from a payphone or anything after she pulled off the road, because she left her job after Wayne allegedly left his job. There's no indication that either of them had a mobile phone from the records and articles we have either.
This part is so frustrating to me because there are so many coincidences, which I hate. So many unanswered questions and no way to confirm anyone's story. Tara was never seen again and she's never been found. And Wayne, though he was the primary person of interest in the case from pretty much day one, was never charged with a crime. And he died in 2015, I believe. So if he did know anything or play a part in Tara's disappearance, we'll probably never know.
Okay, so how about this creepy regular customer that wrote Tara love notes at the club?
He was also cleared early on, and the same kind of coincidences would apply to him. If he did tamper with Tara's car, he would have had no way of knowing when it would break down. So unless he was consistently following her, there's probably no way he would have been in a position to abduct her or kill her that night on the side of the road.
So that leaves us with an explanation we always hate to consider, that this was a crime of opportunity. Tara's car was a 1986 Pontiac. It is entirely possible that the alternator belt simply wore out on its own. The place she worked at had pretty tight security. Female employees were escorted to their vehicles, and security guards patrolled the premises. It would have probably been pretty difficult for someone to tamper with her car while she was parked at the club, but it's always a possibility. I suppose her boyfriend could have tampered with the car at home, but again, there would have been no way for him or anyone else to know exactly when her car would break down unless they were telling her constantly.
So we're looking at the possibility that Tara's car broke down on its own, and she pulled off to the side of the highway and went looking for a payphone or a call box or a business that would have been willing to let her use a phone. Again, remember, this is 1992. Her car was locked, her purse wasn't in the car, and her mace was left behind. It doesn't appear that she felt like she was in any danger when she left the car. There was no sign of struggle, no blood, no mess, nothing out of the ordinary aside from the broken alternator belt. At first blush, it honestly does appear that Tara simply gathered up her things and went to call for help.
So, if that's the case, then it's possible that she met with trouble after she left her car. Maybe someone stopped her on the side of the road and offered her help or a ride, and then took advantage of the situation. Abducted her or killed her? Maybe Tara did make it to a phone and called for help. If she knew Wayne was at work that night, maybe she called a friend, and that friend did something to her. As far as I've been able to find, none of Tara's close friends have been considered a person of interest, though.
That, unfortunately, is where we are at today. Tara vanished without a trace, and there has been very little movement on her case since day one. Her family has been plagued by tragedy. One of Tara's siblings predeceased her, dying in a plane crash in 1986. Her brother drowned in 2008 at age 43 at Lake Amistad at their parents' anniversary celebration. Tara's other sister died by suicide in 2017. Both of her parents have since passed away as well. If you have any information on the disappearance of Tara Breckenridge in the early morning hours of August 4th, 1992, please contact the Houston Police Department at 713-247-8111.
We are excited to announce that we are now a part of the Darkcast Network.
Scottish Murders is hosted by me, Dawn, and is a multi-award shortlisted victim-focused podcast covering the murders of those from or living in Scotland. We tell each victim's story in a respectful, sensitive, unsensational and unopinionated way. So why not join us wherever you listen to your podcasts and ensure you never miss an episode of Scottish Murders.
Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the podcast creators, host, and guest. Many true crime audience members want to take action. Do you? Here's how you can help. We need an attorney. Do you know anyone willing to work pro bono? The Homicide Families Victims' Rights Act is a new piece of legislation that has yet to be interpreted. So it's a great opportunity for a firm to help shape what justice looks like for families like us in the future. Join our community on one of the social networks. Check out our Facebook pages, Justice for Leon Laurelis or Box in the Basement Podcast, and on Insta at Box in the Basement Podcast. We share updates, photos, and episode information. And now you can also find us on YouTube. See you there. One of the next steps in our Justice for Leon journey is exhuming his body for additional evidence, but it's upwards of $15,000. So please help by donating at our GoFundMe, Justice for Leon. Please sign my petition for the Brownwood Police to re-examine the case. We've been told so many lies, it's time for the Brownwood Police to take responsibility and accountability. One signature can make all the difference. Please like and follow our pages on all social media platforms for Box in the Basement Podcast and Justice for Leon Laurelis. And now you can also find us on YouTube. Also, visit our website, justiceforleon.com. You can also join our email list to stay current on developments on Leon's case and other cases we cover as they happen. Thank you for joining us. Be kind. Later, Gators.